Hello there, my name is Ismail. This is part 5 of our training series on how to make vegetation in Blender 2.8. I think it's part 4, I'm losing count, but we're going to be creating this, I think it's called aloe vera, this plant here, and see how that goes. So I'm not going to start from scratch this time. I'm just going to save this project as project 2 because I want to use the materials we have set up. Let me just delete this and just tweak them a bit because they have this variation already set up. I'll just have to change the texture, and I think that's it. Now we're good to go. So we're not going to use this leaf, so I'm just going to keep it in this. I'm just going to keep it in the scene so that I can it can hold other materials we're going to use. So for this aloe vera, you can try looking at a lot of reference images, but because I want to just having a lot of reference images here is going to take up a lot of my screen space. I'm just going to have this on my side viewport here, and let's start working on that. So the shape of that plant is just, you can just make it using in the same way we made this here. Just start with a mesh, Ctrl to add some subdivisions, and you can scale this down a bit like that because it has this triangular shape, and then you can apply, let me see, actually, let's do it a bit differently and a little bit faster and easier. So let me first make sure that my screen keys, they usually turn off for some reason, but I'm not sure. So let me scale this on x-axis. It's just, let me find the reference image so that I can replace it here, so it's easy for us, so that it's easy for you to see what I'm talking about while I'm modeling it. So let's just get this. You can see its shape is like this. So if we start with a plane and scale this up just a bit, then add in some loops here. Then you can add a loop there. Scale this in just a bit. Again, my screen keys have turned off for some reason. Something like that. Now, if you add a subdivision, you can see we are getting the shape. Maybe grab this up, scale that. So we have something like that. And this bottom side is a bit flat, so I'm just going to add a supporting loop there. So we have something like that. Now, if you look at the middle, it seems that we have some sort of a seam there. So I'm going to add another loop here, Ctrl R. And we have this bend for on every leaf. So what I'm going to do is first add a subdivision surface, a simple deform modifier, again, bend. We need to find the right axis, but before we do that, let's make sure that we have our pivot point at the bottom like that. Let's try the x-axis, sorry, y-axis, z-axis. We're not getting any good results, so let's try rotating this on the x-axis. Make sure that we are rotating this at the 3D cursor and using the 3D cursor as the pivot point. So if we rotate this by 90 degrees, we get that. Now we just have to switch it to face the other side, the opposite side, so can change the bend to be a negative bend instead of a positive one, like that. Now we also need another bend to have this curve back, so I'm just going to copy this and try changing the bend axis. Yeah, so this is good. Just need to bend it the other side like so. Now we are good to go. You can see this has some thickness to it. So if we add a solidify modifier, we can get that thickness. So let me just increase my thickness a bit here, the opposite direction like that. I can put this above subdivision so that we have those hard edges there. Let's increase this a bit like that. Maybe this is too thick, so let's reduce that a bit. Now I want this middle seam to be a bit sharp and crisp, so I can add another loop here, push that in a bit, and another loop here, push that in a bit, and you can select this loop these three loops, push them in just a bit, and you can see how the crease is starting to form. Maybe just select this, push that in a bit to make that even more firm, like so. I think ours is a bit too firm, so I'm just going to bring that back in. Yes, so something like that. And maybe select these bottom loops, scale them out a bit. You can also turn on proportion editing so that you scale this a bit more uniformly, like so. So we have our single leaf. Now we can start adding some materials to this, and maybe let's first make the plant itself. So if we add an array, we can create duplicates of this, but they're going to be in a line like that, but we want them to be rotated around like that. So to rotate them, you want to add an empty. Let's add this, and you can select your object and change from, in your array modifier, you want to change from relative offset to object offset, and then select this empty as your object offset. Now if you see this happening where the scale of the object is changing, make sure you apply the scale of the object that has the modifier. So Ctrl A to apply the scale. Now that should fix a few issues, and also try applying the rotation so that you get rid of any extra rotation. And if you scaled this array as well, make sure you unscale it, or let me see, yeah, try applying the scale as well to get rid of any of those things from happening. Now we have created instances, but they are being superimposed on top of each other. So if we want these to rotate, if we want those duplicates to be rotated, we just rotate the array like this, and we get something like this. Now you can see the shape has also changed quite a bit. You can see it's too thick now because we apply the scale modifier, which also, apply the scale, which also determines the scale of the thickness of the solidify modifier. So if you apply the scale, the thickness will also change. So make sure you pull that back into the thickness you expect it to be, and that should be good to go. Now we want something like, I don't know, 4, maybe 5 at the bottom. So we're going to go to the array and make sure that that is set to, let's try 6 and see. But I don't like how they are being connected there. So what you can do is select the mesh. Let me first remove this array just so that I can see where this is, and I rotate it on the, just rotate it. Make sure you're rotating it at its pivot there, like that. And if we turn on the array, you can see what's happening to the meshes. So it makes these leaves kind of lay on top of each other instead of just intersecting like that. So if I'm rotating this, you can see, give it a slight rotation. And if you want, you can also push it outside a bit so that we have some space between each of the leaves, something like that. And you can try and increase, go back to the surface deform, play around with the angle of rotation. So we have two simple deforms here. So think this to make them bend even further, like that. Now to get this second layer, we'll have to duplicate this again, Shift D, and now we can try doing other things here. We can try rotating them, maybe just play around with the array. So let's see, where is my array, so that we get some bit of variation in this. So if I'm just adding, maybe let me just use 4 this time, and rotate these just a bit like that. And I want to move these up. So the problem is that moving these up also moves the array itself, so we can just play around just a bit until you get something useful. Or if you want to make your life simpler, what you can do, instead of using the same array object, let me make sure that I only have one, you can duplicate. I'm not sure why my instances are too many, so we want to use something like 5 here. We want to use 6 for the bottom, and that for the second layer we can duplicate both the array and the array object, Shift D, and this will just make a new instance of that object with different with this new array object. Now if you want to rotate this, you can just rotate both the array and the array object together so that they can rotate uniformly. Otherwise, if you just rotate one, you get this, and if you just rotate the array, you get that. So you can rotate them just a bit, and can start moving this around so that it's not intersecting with the later instances. So select this with is array, I think it's this, move it around. Now we can go back to the surface deform or simple deform, change the bend just a bit, maybe reduce on the rotation, something like, see. So you can see there's a lot of experimenting here with different settings, because every project is going to look a bit different, and I think that's also a good thing because you get a more organic look. So let's try something like that. I think that's good enough. So you can just keep on layering these different, and you can also just go into edit mode of this and scale it on the x-axis to get thinner leaves than the layer before, because as you can see the top leaves are thinner and less thick than the bottom ones, maybe even shorter. So let's scale this down just a bit, and make sure we're scaling it down from the pivot point of the object itself. So cursor to selected, something like that, thinner. Maybe this time we can reduce the array count, something like that. As you can see, now we can add these two, and now we should be able to, we should be done with this. So again, I'm just going to duplicate this with this array so that it's easier for me to rotate and move around. So something like that. Again, make this thin by scaling it in edit mode. If you scale it outside edit mode, you will get this kind of effect, which is also not that too bad because it adds some variation in the scale, but you might not want that sometimes. So scale rotation. Now we can use something like 3. So we have that. Now you can also reduce the thickness a bit, like this, and maybe for this as well. So let's go to the materials now that we are done with that. You can see how that is looking. So for the materials, we can select just one of these leaves and create a new material. Actually, remember I wanted to use this same material. So let me just select everything and link it to this. Ctrl L to link the material so that all these have the same material. You can even see that it's starting to look a bit better. But the first thing we want to do is to UV unwrap this. So let me select all these, unwrap. Now I can go to the UV texture, make sure that I align these with the leaf. So something like this. this already can just be is a leaf of its own, which I'm actually going to leave so that I have a different leaf like that. Maybe just go back to the UV and scale up this leaf a bit. So you can see how easily you can create a lot of variation without doing too much work when it comes to making vegetation here. Because I was trying to make this, but I think this can also be its own leaf. So what I'm going to do is just select this, Shift D to create its own, to have it as its own image, as its own leaf. We'll come back to this here so that we finish this, but I just want to make this its own leaf. So what I can do, I don't want this thickness to exist on this one, so I'm just going to go on and remove that, and then I can select all the leaves, and just so I can just move only the mesh, and this and the array or the leaf is not messed up like it becoming right now. You can apply all the visuals here, Control A, which will apply all these the modifiers we have here, except the modifier I don't want to apply is this subdivision, because I want to apply that after I apply all these, because I want to have control on whether I want to have the subdivision on the material or not, so on the mesh or not. So Control A, and use and select this visual geometry to mesh, and it will apply all the modifiers on the selected objects, and then you can use Control J to apply this into its own object. Now if I add Control 2, let's see, I can add it as its own single object, and I can save that somewhere else. I don't need these anymore. So let's get back to this, complete it. So the first thing I don't want, you can see this is a bit smoother than what we have here. So these veins are either not there or they are not that visible. So what I'm going to do is first make this its own material. So I'll call this aloe vera. You know what, this tutorial has gone on too long, so we'll come back from here and start